So welcome everybody to the Small Ball Podcast. I am your host, Bill Littler, and this is going to be the first episode of the third season of a Small Ball Podcast. And typically to do something during our off season up here in PA, but this episode is a little bit something that is probably important for a lot of you. And if you're sitting here watching Facebook and seeing all these different tryouts and everyone promising you the world and you really don't know where to go or what to do, this is probably the episode for you. So if you look around, these are all the travel organizations within driving distance of Beaver County, which is kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, now these aren't teams, these are the organizations. So if you add the teams into it, it's even more teams. So as a parent, how are you to know what is best for your daughter? This episode can apply anywhere nationally. I'm sure everyone has this issue everywhere. So now my experiences, I've been involved in fast pitch now for 15 years. My daughter started playing at a young age. Actually, both my daughters started playing. One stopped playing after a while, and then my other one is now playing at Youngstown State. She'll start her sophomore year this fall. So I've been through everything. I've been through the rec programs. I've been through the all-star programs. I've been through travel teams. I've coached a travel team. My daughter has played on a bigger travel team in the area, a more competitive one. So I've seen it all, and I've been involved in a lot of it. And I kind of sat back in the shadows when my daughter started playing for Team Pennsylvania. So I'm going to kind of talk about teams a little bit. There's two organizations that I favor just because they've been good to me and my daughter. It's Valley Rage, which is a local travel organization here, and then Team Pennsylvania, which is the reason why my daughter's playing at Youngstown State on a scholarship. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about those, and I'll get into that later in this program or in this podcast. But right now, I just want to tell you a little bit about me. So. I coached my daughter through rec program, and then into the all-star teams, and then started to coach her in the travel programs. And once I started to realize that she was she had college potential. She was a college prospect. She had the ability to play, and she also wanted to play. And I started to notice that around 12, 13, and that's when I decided that I was in her way, and I didn't want to be that selfish dad coach who coached to collect trophies and all that other stuff, which you really need to be careful with where you're going because of that. But my goal was to get my daughter onto a team that was coached by somebody who had experience playing the game, who had experience with the college recruiting aspect of it, and who had a lot of connections to get where I wanted her to go or where she wanted to go ultimately. And we'll talk more about this as we go through it, but the biggest challenge I think it is for parents is to really understand what it is you want out of travel softball. There's a lot of different things that you can get out of it. Just doing something through the summer. It is fun. It's fun hanging out with other parents, watching your kids play ball. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just want to make sure that if that is what you want or what your daughter wants, you got to make sure that you're taking that approach where it's not going to break the bank, and you're not doing things that you probably don't need to spend extra for if you're not doing them in certain. The first thing that we're going to talk about is this is going to be called the Parent's Guide. Choosing the right travel softball team, and like I said, this is going to be something that hopefully helps everybody get a better understanding of what you should do as a parent to find out where your daughter wants to go play at. Yeah, so these are just some of the points that we're going to hit. So, about the teams and programs, those are things you need to learn. Training and development is very important. Playing time and positions, tournament and travel. There's a lot of cost associated with this, especially nowadays. It seems like it's getting worse. The team culture and expectations, cost and commitment, and of course, the college recruitment and future opportunities with that. Yeah. All right. So this first part here is it about the team and the program? It's important to understand what that team is and what that organization is, right? Ultimately. Now, a lot of times you'll get the organizational presidents or board members really talk big about the organization itself. But a lot of times that those people that are doing that, they might be really good at what they do, but they're not really going to be involved with your team much. And these are things that do happen a lot, where you have a lot of empty promises and things just because they want your talent in their organization. But you need to understand that the person who's going to be closest to your daughter is going to be the coaches on your team. And those are the guys that you really need to pick on, or women. But you need to really pound that group, whether it's the head coaches or the coaches are going to help, and find out more about that team and what they do. A lot of times the programs in itself may not have group workouts and indoors in the winter months, whatever. Some of them do. Some of them are better at it than others. But a lot of times you have these teams going off and doing their own thing, and they're just kind of wearing the organization's colors. And you'll see that a lot, especially with the national teams. Not the true national teams, but if you see like a Texas Glory team pop up in our area, it's a national name, but it's a local team. And there's no connection between the two other than them just wearing their colors. And you got to be careful with that, because they'll sell the fact that they're Texas Glory, and we're a Texas Glory team that has this huge presence nationally, but that local team is really all it is just another local team. So those are just some of the things you got to look for. So finding out what the team's overall philosophy and approach to coaching is, and again, asking the head coaches these questions, not the president, because the president, typically the people who run these organizations have experience, have the knowledge, have the skill set that to be a better coach, but they can't coach all the teams. So now you need to look and see who they're asking to coach these other teams that they have within their program, and that's where the trick is, right? So the questions that you want to ask this head coach of your team is, how long has the team been established? So is this a team that you just pulled together because I was mad that Sally didn't get to start all the time, so I made my own team? You have that all the time, and you got to be really careful, because those teams are really not the teams that you want to play for. Now, what are the goals for the teams this season? So then these are just more questions that you can ask the head coach to kind of get some information out of them to make you feel comfortable with the decision that you're making. How is the team structured? Like, there's age groups, skill levels. You'll have different things and different organizations on how they approach that. Now, the one thing that I do want to bring up, I'll pick on an organization like Outlaws, for instance, and I'll show you their website here. But the Outlaws, is honestly one of the better organizations in the area. It's not only one of the better, but they're one of the bigger ones. And what they do is they have different levels of teams. So they'll have their regional teams, which are just local teams. Then they'll have their premier teams, which are maybe a step better. And then they'll have their national teams who travel everywhere. And Outlaws will always sell the fact that they recruit. They recruit, they have connections to college coaches and all this stuff. But a lot of the regional teams don't get that attention as much as the premier teams or even the national teams. So you got to be careful. Just because you're wearing the Outlaw colors doesn't mean you're on a team that you really want to be on. There's also some things that goes on. I've talked to coaches who coached there previously, and a lot of times they'll handpick players from the regional teams and put them in the premier teams or in the national teams, and a lot of times there's other girls that maybe aren't as good as those other girls that have been selected that are now on teams that may not be as good as they once were, or maybe they felt betrayed, or maybe they felt like they were left out. So that stuff happens in that type of organization. So you need to understand how do the teams, or how did the organization go about with developing the teams, or creating the teams, assigning the teams, whatever they need to do. Another thing too is I know that there were some coaches who were on those premier teams and maybe even considered national teams, but they didn't get first pick of the girls who were trying out. And so there's a lot of that happens as well. So be careful with organizations like that. And the other thing too is, and I don't have any proof of this, but I know it happens. They kind of, there's fees that roll into the bigger organization. So a lot of these organizations will use this as an income. You got to be careful with what you want. Now that may not be a bad thing. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's something that you need to be aware of because there's other opportunities that aren't reaching into your pockets a little bit deeper than they need to. So then, and of course, the other thing is if the team has been established, what's the team's success rates, right? How are you placing your win and loss records? How's the team placing? Those are things that are very nice to know. Not necessarily important, but they are nice to know. Another thing to ask too is why are you looking for players? Did someone quit? Did you cut somebody? So training and development, this topic's really important because when you pay this extra money to play on a travel team, you expect player development, and you should. It should be something that comes with it. So and again, some organizations are really good with player development and other organizations aren't. And it all depends on what you're looking for, what you need. And of course, it all depends on what you need or what you're looking for. So again, some of the questions to ask: what does the practice schedule look like? How often do they practice? How long are the practices? Where are the practices located? Again, not all organizations do it together as a group. So one team may be out in this field over here. There's another team that the head coach has connections to play on this field or in this facility. So you need to figure that out too. What types of training and development opportunities are offered. So a lot of times they'll have, these organizations will have different opportunities for these kids. I know I'll pick on the Lady Roadrunners. I know one time when my daughter was younger, one of their big things was that Crystal Bustos would come and do a hitting session with all the kids. And now, Pittsburgh Lady Roadrunners is a pretty big organization, so having someone like that come is nice, but what did she really give to these kids? When you have 100 kids that you need to work with, it's really hard to actually help them, but just the experience itself is pretty cool. But those are the types of things you want to ask about and see what other extras are there. How does the coach handle the player development and progression? Like, what are their expectations? Do you have a set procedure each off season? Are you looking to teach them how to do certain things and then move them on to the next thing? Is there some kind of progression with that? What do you expect to get out of the off season training? I've attended several off season training with my daughter and even other areas or other organizations, and some, like I said, some of them are really good at it, others are not really good at it. You see a lot of rec level coaching in a lot of places, which again isn't bad. I'm just saying that if it's not what you're looking for, you got to be careful with that. In the state of the art things that they're doing nowadays with getting these girls better, a lot of this deals with having dads coach. You hear and see a lot of old school mentality or baseball mentality that are teaching these girls, and that's the kind of stuff that you got to kind of be careful with, because there's a lot more out there, a lot more advancement out there that's more specific to softball that you get when you have college experienced players actually coaching the teams. Just the other question you can ask is do you offer individual feedback and goal setting with the players? I know some coaches do this, some coaches don't, but setting goals and setting expectations are always good for the girls. If your coaches aren't doing it, there's nothing stopping you as a parent from doing that. I know that I did that with my daughter, even in Team PA days. I would take her to different programs, whether it was Softball Factory, USSSA tryouts, or any place that would give an unbiased opinion of her, and I would look into her and see where she is from a speed standpoint, or from her throwing philosophy, or her exit speed velocity with hitting the ball. I would see all that, and I would keep track of it all, and these were target areas that we would improve on. So I know she was a fast player, and if she was running a 2.9, where we wanted her to run a 2.7, then we would focus on that in the off season and make sure that she would get to that 2.7 mark, and it would be a goal of hers to get there. Same thing with throwing velocity. We would do a long toss program to get her arm stronger so she can hit the 60 miles per hour throwing velocity, or maybe exit velocity. She always would shoot for 70, and I don't think she ever hit 70, but she's a slapper. So, but that was definitely one of the things that she would work at, whether it was lifting weights to get stronger or going through to a hitting coach to help with mechanics. But I think, having these goals for your kids and helping them understand how to achieve those goals, and finding coaching that can actually help you achieve those goals is really something that you want to do. And I'm a big fan of private lessons. I think private lessons are very vital for kids to get better at it. I know they're expensive. They could be expensive. There are other coaches that maybe aren't as expensive as others, but of course you're going to get the experience and things that you pay for. So you might get someone who maybe doesn't have as much experience as someone else who charges double. So it all depends on how it fits with you and your family. Everyone's worried about this, playing time and positions. I know a lot of, or I should probably say most organizations, or most teams, for instance, most teams will say, they go with 10 girls, sometimes 9 girls or 11 girls, and they keep the numbers really low just to make sure that everyone gets that playing time. But, to me, this is something that's kind of, you got to be careful, because what's happening is you're setting your daughter up for false expectations, because as she gets older, whether she goes to plays ball at the high school level or junior high level, or at the high school level, or maybe even into the college level, you're not going to have 10 girls on a team or you're guaranteed playing time. You're going to have to work for that position. You're going to have to work for that playing time. You're going to have to put in the work, the extra work, the hard work and the dedication to get that playing time. So there's something to be said about a travel team that maybe has 12, 13 players, because, that environment not only gives the coaches options from a coaching standpoint, but it also creates some internal competitive pushing to get these kids better and not just assume that they're going to play. So, I mean, it's a good thing to have those bigger teams. I know a lot of travel organizations or travel teams don't like the bigger teams, and I get it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if your coach only rolls with 10 players. But I would think that most teams, or at least should, go for the 12 or 13 numbers. Now, a big part of that is the fact that there are so many teams in this area. And I know that is a really sore point, just because of the fact that with all the teams, the talent spreads so thin. And then what happens is you have good players that are looking for teams, and you're going to have coaches that are like really aggressive, maybe telling you a little bit of fibs, or maybe blowing things out of proportion just to lure your daughter to their organization because they need players. A lot of times you'll see these I just call them spin up organizations that come out of nowhere, and you're like, who's that? And it turns out that, a dad has a pitcher who's really good, and he doesn't like how she was getting her, playing time. So he went and started his own organization. And, you see a lot of that. And another thing that happens too is, you see teams or players that are skipping from team to team to team to team. And, you have to wonder why. Like, why are you changing your team every year? Is it because you're misguided, or maybe you're always looking for something that maybe isn't there, or you're thinking your daughter is maybe a little bit better than what she really is, and you run into all that mess. So, playing time and positions on where they play, that's up to the coach, and you're seeing a lot of that go away nowadays. Like, the respect for the coaches aren't there, and some of it's justified. If you have a coach that's in a position that really shouldn't be there, and parents are playing on his team or her team, you're in a situation where, well, maybe you aren't a good coach, or maybe you shouldn't be coaching this team. So you're kind of setting things up for failure in that sense. So it's important. And of course, playing time, you don't want to pay this kind of money and not have fair playing time. or a fair opportunity to get playing time. So, but you also need to understand that if you're on a team that has 10 or 11 players, your daughter needs to step up. If she wants to play, she needs to show them that she needs to play. And I guarantee you, if you got a player who's busting her butt, getting better, hitting the ball, they're going to find a place for her. So, that's the stuff that goes on. And other things like, is there an opportunity for players to try out for different positions? These are things you ask, and sometimes maybe you should have the player ask and the parents stay out of it, depending on the age. If you're dealing with an 8-year-old, of course you don't do that. Maybe even a 10-year-old, but if you have a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, they need to start taking care of themselves, and it's a good opportunity for them to start learning how to vouch for themselves as far as what should I do, coach? How can I improve? What are you looking for? What don't you like? Why can't I play this position? Or what? Just ask the coach and be transparent with them and ask what you can do as a player to get where you want to go. And then ask the coach, how do you handle situations where players are not getting as much playing time as their parents might expect? And I'm kind of talking a little bit about that already, but a lot of times the parents are the ones who are really, pushing for this, and you got to be careful as a parent, because the coaches are doing what they feel is best for the team, and maybe it's not something that you agree with or appreciate, but that's what that focus is, and that's when you need to make sure that you're asking these questions before you sign up for that team, because if you fall on a team where the coach may not be handling things appropriately, maybe playing daddy ball, or maybe pushing girls that are closer to her or him in front of other kids, then maybe that's not a team that you need to be on. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is the actual tournaments and travel behind what they call travel ball. Now, there's local teams that play within the area. There's a lot of tournaments in the area that you really don't need to travel too far. And then there's also teams that travel every weekend. And my experience is I was on both. So my daughter played with Valley Rage, who has a tendency to stay local. And then I also played on Team Pennsylvania, where we traveled and had to stay overnight every weekend. And all this stuff you need to ask the coaches just to see where you're at before you join that team. So how many tournaments does a team participate in each season? Usually when you're playing the local tournaments in our Beaver County area or Western PA, Eastern Ohio, those tournaments aren't that expensive. So you might be able to play several tournaments at a cheaper cost. If you're traveling far away and going to these showcase tournaments, I know showcase tournaments can cost close to $2,000 for each one. So, that's going to be reflected on your registration fees. And, when you do go to those types of tournaments, you want to make sure that you're worthy of going. You want to make sure that your team can actually compete in there. There's a lot of stuff that's also involved in that. Just because you go to a showcase tournament doesn't mean you're going there and you're going to be a team that's looked at. Some of these pop-up organizations or organizations that don't have much experience with recruiting, that don't understand that just because you pay $1,500 to play in a showcase, it doesn't mean that your kids are going to get looked at, because there's different levels within those showcases. So if you aren't in a power pool, then most likely coaches aren't going to walk to that facility that you're playing at unless they know someone specific that they want to go see. There's a lot of times when my daughter's team didn't make those power pool. I know one time we traveled down into Tennessee, Georgia area, and we were playing off a beating pass somewhere where the only coaches that showed up were the coaches that you knew were looking at your daughter. So, you got to be careful with that. Just because it says showcase doesn't mean there's going to be college coaches there. Or there's going to be college coaches there, but they're just not going to be at your facility or your games. And I know a lot of local organizations will play locally and then maybe have one big tournament every year that they go overnight somewhere, whether it's up in Erie or wherever it might be. That's all cool too. And the reason why is that there's a lot of expenses with traveling. You on top of your team registration fees, you're looking at travel costs. And I know that one year that my daughter was playing with Team PA, and it was her big year to get recruited. We traveled somewhere every weekend, and we spent probably $2,000-3,000 a weekend just on travel costs. Whether it's paying for gas and hotels and food and all that stuff, and it's expensive, and it gets to be a lot of money. And so you have to understand that going into that team. If you want your daughter to play on a bigger team, but she's not interested in playing college, why are you going to invest all that money into this when you don't really need to? You can find another team locally, or if your daughter has, dreams of playing locally, whether it's in Geneva or Penn State Beaver or maybe somewhere else, you don't need to go to those big colleges to play in schools like that. Like whether it's up in, Erie or, wherever it may be, you can go to camps and different things to get that attraction in here without paying that big money. It's important for you as a parent to really get a good understanding of what it is you want to get out of travel softball for your daughter, or what your daughter wants to get out of it, more importantly. And that's probably a good thing to think about is, and I think I have a slide about it, but you want to make sure your daughter is making these decisions and not you, because if your daughter isn't really wanting to do this, then what type of investment are you making in her? The team culture and expectations are probably the most important thing that you need to really talk to the head coaches about. I know that you as a parent or as a player, you have expectations of what a team should be, and a lot of times you might not have that type of environment that you're looking for, that you would like to. Some kids are better on certain teams than other kids. So if you have a kid that's maybe shy or standoffish a little bit, then maybe you have a team full of hard-nosed players that maybe it's not a good fit. So you need to figure that team culture out and what the team expectations are, and make sure that they align with what you and your daughter has. The other thing too is how does the coach handle if there's issues on a team, if there's conflicts or problems within the team itself? What happens? I know that there was times when, on my Valley Rage coaching days, I kicked players off the team because of how some of their parents were acting. They weren't a very good fit on the team. They were very toxic, and it just kind of makes it a very uncomfortable situation, not only for the players, but also for the parents. So, me trying to keep that team as positive as possible, I did cut a couple players because of their parents. Now I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it's the team culture is really important, because you're spending time with parents and the players every weekend, and you're spending a lot of time with each other. And if you're not fitting right in that team, then you need to try to figure that out before you join that team, because it's going to make for a very long and miserable season if you're not feeling like you're a part of it. The other thing to ask too is what role do the parents have on a team? So is there like fundraising? Is there any kind of volunteering? Is there transportation assistance? If parents are carpooling or whatever. So those are things that are kind of important from a parent standpoint, just to get an understanding of how these teams operate. Fundraising is a big thing. It's expensive to play nowadays. Like I said before, everyone has their hand in your pockets as parents with these softball players, with any youth sports really. So there's a lot of money involved, and you don't want to have to pay for everything yourself. So fundraising does play an important role with having to cover all the expenses that come with this. Now, what are the team's rules as far as communicating with coaches and teammates? So, that's something that you need to ask as players mostly, but also as parents. What's my role? Like, what can I communicate with? What can I say? I never listened when I coached. I never listened to anyone's opinion on, if a parent would say, why isn't so-and-so batting in front of so-and-so? I'd be like, oh, it's my decision. I'm not sharing that with you. It's not your business. So, but if there was something related to your daughter, then I would talk to you about it. But if you start talking about other kids and everything, I don't have time for that as a coach, because that's not a place that needs to be touched as parents. So you got to know your role as well. And it's your opportunity to ask during these tryouts, ask and figure out if this is a right team culture and what your expectations are as a team and your role as a parent. Another thing that's important as parents and coaches appreciate this is to offer your assistance. And I'm not saying in a coaching sense, but anything that you can help with. I know that, a lot of these coaches are the ones who are planning the travel, hotels for the team and all that stuff. And I know that's a big pain. And, when I went to, when my daughter went to Team Pennsylvania, that was one of the things I asked the coach. I was like, do you want me to take over the hotel stuff? Because I know that's a big burden on the coaches. And by me volunteering to do that, it helps keep the, keeps positive environment on that team. So it was one of the things that I did. I offered to, so I know some parents offer to do Game Changer, or there's other things that can happen. People are helping with team dinners, or be that person who is part of the solution, not part of the problem. Don't be that parent that sits back there and complains about everything and doesn't isn't willing to participate or help out or do things to make the team better. So I always made sure I'd go out of my way to make sure that these coaches that coach my daughter and put the time into my daughter, that I made sure that they at least felt that they can ask me if they needed anything. To me, that's important. I think that's important both as a parent and as a former coach. The parents who said, "Hey, can I help?" I'll be like, "Yeah, absolutely." Make sure you're part of the solution and not part of the problem. So we talked a little bit about this, but the costs and commitments are very is a very real thing, especially nowadays. And it's even getting worse with the economy the way it is today. So what is the total cost? Including uniforms, equipment, and travel. So a lot of times these organizations will say, well, it's going to cost you $1,200 to play in our organization, which is really cheap nowadays. But it's going to cost us $1,200 to play, but that doesn't include travel. It doesn't include uniforms. It doesn't include equipment. All that stuff may be separate. So you need to really understand what the total cost of this organization is going to be. How many tournaments do you stay overnight? Does it come with a helmet? Does it come with a backpack? Does the uniforms, are they included? I know a lot of organizations now are taking the uniforms out of the registration fees and making the parents just buy them directly. So they would share the links to the uniforms, and then the parents would go in, or the kids would go in and order their uniforms or sizes, their numbers, all that stuff. And then it's a separate cost outside of the registration fees. Some organizations still cover all that. So if you're paying, $1,800, you might get uniforms with that. How many uniforms are you getting? That's always important. I know with Rage, my teams always had 2 or 3 uniforms. I think my daughter's Team PA teams, they had like 4 or 5 different uniforms. It was crazy. But a lot of that all depends on the organization itself. Then of course, are there any other fees for tournaments, camps, or clinics? So a lot of times coaches will set up team camps with maybe a bigger school, like maybe at Robert Morris or at Pitt. You can do a team camp with them. That's a separate cost. Is there camps at these tournaments that you go to? So if you're recruiting or you're looking to play at the next level, it's important to hit these camps before you play the tournaments, because that's where the coaches can really make connections with you. And then they'll use the tournaments afterwards to watch you play. And then of course there's clinics or private lessons, all that stuff is extra as well. So those are things that you need to pay attention to. Now, a big thing, you hear a lot of parents, I hear parents about this all the time. They decided this team isn't theirs. They don't want their daughter to play on it anymore. The daughter doesn't want to play on it anymore. And now they're asking for a refund. Yeah. So, I mean, and you need to understand that beforehand. I mean, I'm hoping that with this, at least helps you get a better understanding of being on the right team or finding the right team and not have to worry about this. But a lot of parents demand a refund, and that's not always the case. You know, if the money that you paid is money that you paid, and you're not going to get a refund. You know, this isn't Kohl's or Amazon where you can return everything. But like I said, that depends on the organization, and it's up to you, the parents, to understand what that is, just in case it's something that crosses, that crosses your path. Personally, I never really had any reason to give money back to anyone who quit or got kicked off my team. It is what it is. You know, how do you handle fundraising or sponsorship opportunities to offset cost? I know Team PA allowed you to bring in your own sponsors, and that money would help offset the cost for the registration fees. I know Team or Valley Rage didn't do that. There were sponsorships. I know a couple of my players had sponsorships, and I just let them keep the money because it's not for the team; it's for the players' connections and stuff. So, and like I said, all organizations are different, so you need to figure out what that is. And a lot of the sponsorship opportunities and also fundraising can offset a lot of those costs. Those are things that you need to talk with the coach about. I know my team, we would have 3 or 4 fundraisers, and they were optional. Some of the parents wanted to do fundraising, and other parents really didn't care to do it. So, we would find fundraising where, if you sold 500 candles, you got that money back. Some of that money would go to the team, but not all of it. And the money that didn't go to the team, if it covered your expenses and you had more, I know parents used it to buy another bat or something. So, and again, it all depends on how the team is run, from an organizational standpoint, or even just the team itself. So, those are things you need to really be mindful of and ask beforehand. Some organizations would have fundraising for themselves, so they would have the entire organization do fundraising, maybe sell a couple tickets or whatever the case may be, with whatever it is. But that money can go towards if they have like a facility that they rent out for the entire organization, or whatever else it might be. But you need to ask these questions going in, so you understand what it is. Now, if you're not a person who sells tickets, but you might have to sell $20 tickets, that's going to be an extra cost that you're going to have to pay for. A lot of times, I know when my wife and I, with our kids doing stuff, we didn't do a lot of the fundraisers. We weren't like a fundraising type of family, so we would just buy those tickets a lot of times. So that's something that you need to figure out and make sure that you're aware of what it is before you go into that team, and make the commitments to help out as much as you can with fundraising. Now, this is a big one here. College recruitment and future opportunities. You got to kind of be careful in this area, just because you have a lot of coaches who may feel that they know more about this than they really do. There's a lot involved with college recruiting when it comes to, especially with girls playing softball. It's not what you know, it's who you know in a lot of cases, and it's really important to, if your daughter wants to play college softball, it's really important for her to get on teams that really know what to do to help these kids get recruited. I'll use Team Pennsylvania as an example. My daughter wanted to play softball at Pitt. That was a big dream of hers that she had. I'm not sure why she had that dream, but she did. And she made relationships with one of the coaches that were there, the outfield and slapping coach that was there. And she made relationships early on, before they were able to talk to her. And that coach left. She ended up taking a career job instead of coaching job, but she left the team, and Macy still wanted to play there, but she lost that relationship that she had and developed with that coach. So she had to kind of start over. So we sent her to camps and all that stuff. And long story short, she got called by Pitt on September 1st, but they never really offered her anything. And we later realized that it was more about they wanted her to be a preferred walk-on, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But because of the connections that Rochelle Hall had, who's the Team PA president, there was teams knocking on her door that wanted Macy bad, and one of them was Youngstown, and she had told us, and we made a visit, and Macy loved the place, and the facilities were great there, and the campus was awesome, the coaches were awesome, and Macy ended up finding a home there, and she probably started playing more at Youngstown more so than she would have at Pitt. At Pitt, she may have not even seen the field, or maybe she would have just been a pinch runner or something. So knowing people, and if we didn't know Rochelle, or if Macy wasn't on Team Pennsylvania at that point, she probably would have never went to Youngstown. Maybe she would have went to Pitt and realized that she made a mistake, and then she would have to hit the portal and maybe not land somewhere else. So it's really cool to have someone in your back pocket who's looking out for you. And Team PA is in my opinion one of the best in the area when it comes to college recruiting. When you they're kind of like an old mentality still, where if you have to make a Team Pennsylvania team, they don't add teams just because they have enough to make another team with the tryouts. They sometimes have 30 girls that show up at their tryouts, but they're only looking for specific girls. They don't look to bring on and make another team just because they have the numbers. So it's an old school honor to be on Team Pennsylvania, because you tried out and you were placed on a team because of your skill set, not because you had the money to pay for it. So another thing that's neat with Team Pennsylvania is the people who run it, Rochelle Hall and Kara Sroka is another one. They really go out of their way to make sure that they do everything they can to get these girls recruited or placed in colleges. You look at their past, I don't know, 5-6 years of teams, and every team has a full roster of girls that were committed to colleges. But if a girl wanted to play college softball, they did everything they can to find them a place, and they were really good. And I can tell another story, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but there was a girl who left one team because she felt like she wasn't getting opportunities, and Rochelle, picked her up, offered her a position, and she got that girl recruited just by calling a coach and saying, "You need to sign this girl." And the coach didn't even see her, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll take her." And I don't know whatever happened with that, but that just gives you that understanding that college coaches look for relationships with travel teams. And just because you go to a travel team and they say, "Well, we're going to go to showcases, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that," if they don't have those connections, all they're going to be is empty promises. And we see that a lot nowadays, just because of the desperation that a lot of teams or organizations have needing players. They'll say, well, we can recruit, or we know this person here, or we can do this or that. When it comes to college recruiting, and a lot of them, they think maybe they can, but to really experience firsthand how valuable it is to have someone who is connected with the college coaching circles. It's so important to get these kids recruited like that. Now, I know college isn't for everybody. I know a lot of kids just want to play travel softball just because it's fun and something to do, and there's a place for that. But if your daughter wants to play college softball, you need to get into these programs that have a true connection with college coaches. And an easy way to do that is just go look at their profile sheets. Look and see where they're recruiting kids. Where are they placing kids? If your daughter wants to play at Gannon or these Edinburgh or these other local schools in this area, then find that coach that can place them there. A lot of times you don't even need coaching with these Division 2 or 3 schools. You just go to their camps, and if your daughter's good enough, they'll look at you. And and if your daughter wants to play at a bigger level or maybe outside of the state, you need to look at coaches that can help you with that. So it's kind of a slippery slope when it comes to that. And there's a lot of empty promises out there. And you got to be really mindful of where you're going and what your daughter wants to do. Yeah, so and every team's different. So like, what kind of exposure does a team provide for college recruitment? And again, you need to talk to the coaches, because the coaches are going to be the ones who have the most involvement. I know with like Team Pennsylvania, for instance, Macy's coaches, Brooke Wilson and her sister Brittany, really helped out with recruiting parts. So when there were coaches that come up to the field and they would walk over and talk to the coaches and really help with them and engage with it. Macy's had other coaches that did that too, like Emma Nedley, and there's dozens of coaches that were involved on Macy's team that really helped out with that. And you want that because you need that interaction with the college coaches. Now, there's a lot of college coaches that know these travel coaches personally and say, hey, do you have a player that fits his profile? I'm looking for it. Or college coaches or the travel coaches can reach out to colleges coaches and say, hey, do you know anyone or any program that's looking for this player profile? All this, they say the softball circles are small. So I know there was a player on Macy's team. She's from Riverside, Sam Rosenberger. She's pitching down in Barry University, which is down in South Florida, and she actually got noticed there in a tournament or a showcase that we played up in New England. So knowing coaches and the connections is really important. And then, of course, what is your track record for helping players advance to college softball programs? And again, like I said, you can look at their websites to see where is this coach's players or this organization's players being placed. The bigger programs like Team Pennsylvania and the Outlaws, they place a lot of their players in Division I and Division II programs in the Western PA, Eastern Ohio area. That they do that. If you're looking for a smaller school, whether it's at Penn State Beaver or wherever it might be, like in Geneva or whatever, you don't have to go to those big programs. You can go to the smaller programs and achieve the same thing there. It just all depends on what your daughter wants out of college. And then do you offer guidance and support for a college recruiting process? And that's, to me, this is where it's important to have girls who have already been through that process help. So if you have a college coach who is a female, who did go through the recruiting process, who did do all that, it's vital because they know exactly what you need to do as a player. And it's important. And I'm not saying dads can't be that or men can't be. There's a lot of great men coaches out there who have been through that process themselves, which is similar with the recruiting and stuff. But it's just important to have that understanding or knowledge of the whole recruiting process, because it's so involved and so detailed that you need to really know what to do and how to do it, because the window for recruiting is small, and especially with the rules that they put in place now with recruiting. And if you miss that window, you're going to be out of luck. If you are a Division I talent and you want to play Division I ball, but you're stuck on a team that doesn't recruit Division I ball, then what are you going to do? You're stuck, and then you only have a couple seasons that gives you that opportunity to be looked at or placed. And if you're not in the right spot at the right time, then you're going to be looking somewhere else. And and that goes for Division II and Division III. If you're playing Division III, if you want to play college softball, there's somewhere for you to go. And a lot of times it is a Division III program, which there's nothing wrong with it. If that's where you want to play, look for the schools that are important to you. Then you can figure that all out. But if there's a place, if you want to play, there's a place for you. You just got to get the right people to help you get where you need to go. Yeah. So this is the last slide. So just I hope that this episode really at least shed some light on the importance of your travel teams. Just remember that your daughter is the one who should be driving all this. You don't want to be that parent who's pushing your kid into playing travel softball or doing things to get to play college softball. I mean, there's a lot of work involved as far as training, getting better, and all that stuff, and that all needs to be done by your daughter. So she's not really sold in doing this. It's really difficult to make them do this. Now I know that the younger kids maybe is a little different, but if you're having to hound your kid at 12U or 14U or even 16U, that you have to get up at a certain time, you have to make sure you're practicing, make sure you're doing that. Maybe they don't love it as much as you do, and you need to really make sure that they are involved in this decision making, and it's not just coming from you. So there's a lot with picking the teams. Of course, financially, the parents need to be involved, and making sure you're helping your daughter at least supervise where they're playing or who they're playing with or who the coach is going to be. But it's important to make informed decisions. And I know a lot of parents are kind of lost in this because it's so much. It's overwhelming sometimes. So hopefully this episode can help parents at least make an informed decision on where they want their daughters to play. And like I said, don't be scared to ask detailed questions and specifically focus on the head coaches, because they're the ones that's going to be closest to your daughter. And gather information. There's a lot of information on the internet now. You can look up coaches' names, you can look up teams, you can look up organizations. Make sure you do your homework before you're making that decision to go to a specific team or organization. And like I said, every girl is different. Some girls want to be on that competitive team. Some girls just want to go out and have fun. And there's nothing wrong with either one. You just want to make sure that you're getting them where they want to be personally. And be careful with some of the coaches out there and some of the organizations, especially the ones that are just new. A lot of times those organizations are being created for the wrong reasons. And they'll like I said before, they'll promise you a lot of stuff that they may or may not be able to do, and they just trying to sell you to get your kid on their teams, and you just have to be careful with that. And again, I'm a big fan of Valley Rage, and Team Pennsylvania, just because they were really good to my kid, and really helped her in more ways than I can thank them for. So of course I'm going to support them over other organizations, and in the Ohio Outlaws too. They're also a good organization. I mean, they're around. They've been around for a while, and they have a lot of connections with the coaches. You just got to be careful with what level you're placed on, because it's not like a one size fits all in that organization. And there's a ton of other organizations that are out there as well. But like I said, it's important to understand who your coach is, because no matter where you're at, the head coach is going to be the one who's going to be invested in your daughter. So you want to make sure that you really pound them and make them know, or at least make you aware of who they are and what their expectations are as a team. So yeah, so that's the episode. So I hope this was what you guys expected. I felt that it was a need, because there were so many. It seems like if you're on Facebook, it seems like there's like 2 or 3 different new tryouts popping up every day. And the funny thing is if you're a daughter looking for a team, or if you have a daughter looking for a team, and you post something on Facebook saying I have a 12U pitcher, and you have it's like vultures. You have like 20 teams post comments on there. Try this one, try this, try out here, try out here, try out here, and I know it can be overwhelming, just because the amount of teams you don't. How do you know where to go or what to do? And even with this episode, it's challenging. So just make sure you ask questions, and focus on the head coaches, and make sure you're getting input from your daughter, because she's the one in the end that's doing this, and you want to make sure that she's getting what she wants out of it. So thanks for watching, and my next episode, I think I'm going to do one for the girls, and it's going to be advice on how to get recruited through college, and I'm going to use my daughter as an example and what she did, and I'll just share everybody from when she was young and what I did with her as far as development goes, and then what she did when she got old enough to take over, and what she did to get recruited. So again, that'll be the next episode, and it'll come up in the summer sometime. So and thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and follow us on Facebook, and I will catch you next time.